BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Farming Today podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. In this episode, déjà vu for flooded farmers.
It has been continuously wet since about October 2023. Financially, mentally, it's going to be a very challenging 12 months if it stays like it is.
Let's start, though, in Oxford, which this week becomes the centre of the known universe for anyone interested in food and farming as the Oxford Farming Conferences get underway. There are two separate events, the Oxford Farming Conference, which was first held in 1936 and kicks off tomorrow, and the Oxford Real Farming Conference, which started in 2010 and begins on Thursday. The two events are a bit different. The OFC is a bit more formal, while the ORFC describes itself as an alternative farming conference and is now the bigger event. As always, Farming Today will be at both, so expect to hear Anna Hill running between venues to bring you all the best bits. Well, this year the OFC's theme is Facing Change, Finding Opportunity, and as part of that, a group of agricultural innovators will be speaking, covering everything from regen farming to renewable energy, insects and milkshakes. Annie Weiss is from Udderly, a new company which will launch its flavoured milk drinks this spring, made with milk from Somerset and what they describe as functional flavours.
A functional flavour is essentially a superfood ingredient that has a unique taste, but also a unique health proposition. The unique flavours we're using are matcha milk, which is powdered green tea leaves, and lion's mane, which is an adaptogenic mushroom, and cacao, which is chocolate, but in a less processed form. We worked really hard to choose the healthiest versions of our flavor ingredients, but we're also choosing ones that are currently trending.
And I suppose that's what is different here, because for years and years we've had flavoured milks, mainly strawberry, chocolate, vanilla. And what you're doing is taking, I suppose, what some might say is a current fashion in food and applying it to milk.
Yes, you say fashion, but I really believe this is the future. People are demanding more minimally processed foods. They're more interested in their health, in reducing sugar. Flavor is just one of the problems. These drinks are also still riddled with loads of sugar, and a lot of times these drinks use a reduced fat milk, and in order to make up for the mouthfeel, they're adding carrageenan, they're adding cornstarch. Our drinks are extremely simple. We're using a very low amount of sugar, our base, which is whole organic milk, and our premium flavor ingredients, and nothing else.
You grew up on a dairy farm in the US, so you know what dairy farming is like. What do you hope this sort of product might mean for a dairy farmer?
I'm really, really hopeful that when our products do get out into market, we can be creating new demand for dairy products. I think a lot of people are disenchanted with dairy. They've switched over to alternative products, and we want to be able to bring them back.
Annie Weiss there. Well, Thomas Ferrugia will also be speaking at the conference. He runs an insect genetics company in the UK called Betabugs.
We run a selective breeding program, which improves the performance of the animals by improving their genetics. And then we supply them either as eggs or juvenile larvae to insect farmers who can then grow them out to make the large larvae, which can then be processed into protein.
And is this protein that is aimed at the food market, or is this protein aimed at the feeding to animals market?
Feeding to animals. So it's primarily for pet or fish as a protein, as a dry protein, which you can formulate into the feed, and for chickens and pigs as live.
And why are the genetics important here? Surely an insect is an insect is an insect.
When you look at the animal farming industry and plants as well, we've been able to always improve the performance of the livestock and do more with less. Chickens today grow bigger, eat less feed and grow faster, so they're more efficient. And with black soldier fly, there's a lot of potential in that regard, but it's not been domesticated for a long time. And that means we can then enable insect farmers to do more as well with the inputs they have. So it means they will be able to produce more protein and eventually that will bring down the price of the protein as well.
There has been criticism, though, particularly of the way chickens have been bred, that it isn't fair, that there are massive welfare compromises that have been made over the years.
I think that's a fair point, and that's something we very much keep in mind as well at Betabugs, and we are focusing on traits which improve performance, but also making sure we're not trading off sustainability or the welfare of the larvae.
This is potentially a massive market, but it is taking some time, isn't it, to get there? How much time does a company like yours have?
We've been doing this for the past 7 years. I think one of the key things that would really help with accelerating this industry in the UK is just clarity on legislation, because we're behind the EU. We've been behind the EU for a good 2-3 years on just what we can feed the insects to. And then there's actually a case for, if we broaden feedstocks, the industry will also grow faster, because there are some concerns from others in the animal feed industry saying, well, you're going to grow insects on co-products, which we can already feed to livestock. And that's a very fair point to make. But insects can eat things that livestock cannot. So if we start broadening things out, that allows the industry to grow faster, and that helps us enable the industry further.
Thomas Farrugia, more from the Oxford Farming Conferences all week. Farmers along the cancelled northern leg of HS2 have told the BBC they still face uncertainty. The high-speed railway line from Birmingham to Manchester was cancelled in October 2023, but land remains set aside for major infrastructure. Judy Hobson is BBC North West Tonight's environment and transport correspondent.
That's the sound of residents celebrating the cancellation of HS2 from Birmingham to Manchester. That was more than a year ago. And yet for communities living along the proposed route, the uncertainty hasn't gone away.
We were losing 250 acres to a rolling stock depot.
Dairy farmer John Edge is retiring. He's trying to sell his home near Middlewich in Cheshire and an adjacent outbuilding, which has planning permission to be converted into homes.
We've had them up for sale since early summer. And yes, we've had plenty of viewings, but everyone has quoted HS2 and the safeguarding as a potential problem. So we're in limbo, like we've been for the last 10 or 12 years.
Even though HS2 is now cancelled, the government is still offering to buy properties like this one.
HS2 have got a blight scheme. They're still buying the properties. And that gives everybody the opportunity to try and move on with their lives. And that's probably what we shall have to do.
All around this area, you can easily spot the properties bought by HS2. They're often abandoned, decked with security cameras and have padlocks on the gates.
It would be nice if some of those properties, and there will be perhaps 10 or 15 in the locality, they're all standing empty and nevertheless they are decaying. And wouldn't it be nice if they were actually let to somebody?
And what a shame that it's in such a mess now.
Residents Graham Dello and Sarah Flannery show us another house bought by HS2 Limited.
The house has been empty now for 15 months and it's just going to rack and ruin.
Unfortunately, that's a real drain on any community. There are some, like Lostock Green, where about 20 houses are still empty. And that's a big proportion out of a small village.
Sarah and Graham are both members of Mid Cheshire Against HS2. The group never disbanded despite the cancellation of the rail line.
We had the celebration of the day of the announcement and we all agreed, no, we will not risk disbanding until safeguarding is lifted. And we must have had a sixth sense about it.
I am ending this long-running saga. I am cancelling the rest of the HS2 project.
Prime Minister Rishi Sunak cancelled HS2 to Manchester back in October 2023. Then local mayors proposed a new line which would follow the same route, dubbed HS2 Light.
We just could not believe it. I mean, it's as simple as that. It was just a bolt from the blue.
I think it's this uncertainty that is the hard thing for people. They're plunged right back into complete uncertainty because they're in blighted properties.
And giving further uncertainty, there is another proposed rail link in Cheshire which would form part of the planned east-west route, Northern Powerhouse Rail.
It's quite wearing, to be quite honest. You know, you'd like to move on with your life, but you can't really plan for anything. We're a family farm here, and son Richard farms in conjunction with us. And again, just for him on the land, the same thing. You can't plan anything and you can't move on.
Dairy farmer John Edge ending that report. Well, it's been a frozen and wet start to 2025 with widespread snow and flooding. For many farmers, it's all a bit too much like last winter, the wettest on record, which saw crops drowned and delayed much planting simply because the land was too wet to get onto it. Ali Hunter-Blair is a tenant arable farmer in Herefordshire. I asked him what his farm's looking like right now.
Wet. Very wet. It has been continuously wet since about October 2023.
What impact has it had on your business?
It's had an impact on my mood more than anything else, but we've had significant levels of flooding, which we get because we're on a floodplain in the River Wye, but we've had a lot of flooding since November 23 all the way through 24, and it looks like we're about to get another one. So a lot of our river ground has died and will be replanted, and even we're on light sandy soils. The amount of water flowing off fields today has been slightly disappointing. 40 mil of rain in the last 24 to 48 hours plus some snow that melted very, very quickly has made it wetter again.
So in those fields, are you losing crop in there, or are you hoping it might survive?
It's a very good question. I haven't got a single field that I can look at and go, proud of that this year. It's just wet patches everywhere. There's a lot of crop on the riverland that I actually replanted, which was a stupid idea because that's dead. So I've probably got about 45, 50 acres that are dead or dying. And then the top land that is planted is okay.
Given where you are you going to change what you do now? Because planting a crop again and losing it again isn't really a sustainable approach.
No, it's a foolish approach. And in times gone by, I would have expected a dry period following such a sort of wet period over the autumn, which is why we had a stab at it, I suppose, in November. But yes, I think we are. I think we're going to use SFI, especially on the Riverland, to mitigate the risk, I suppose. It seems like a bit of a defeatist attitude, but we are getting increasingly large floods increasingly often.
So you put it into a government environmental scheme, the Sustainable Farming Incentive. It could be a win for nature.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to put it into a mixture of things, some of it anyway, into a mixture of sort of pollen and nectar mixes and wild bird mixes that will obviously not flood during the summer, which will be great. Hopefully the bird mixes will be tall enough to survive the floods if they do get them in the winter. So it mitigates our risk, and it's a boost for the environment. And actually, financially for us, it will probably work out better as well.
It has been a difficult time over the past few months, really, for farming. If we do see yet another wet winter spring, what impact will it have?
It just seems relentless. I always sort of pride myself on being fairly jolly, and I don't know whether I'm just getting old and miserable and tired, but I love what I do, and I've just lost that enjoyment in the last last 6 months particularly. It just seems really sloggy at the moment. And obviously you stick the government stuff on top of that as well, and you've just got this sort of perfect storm of, without wanting to use a weather pun, perfect storm of sort of weather, prices, government policy, and you're just there going, what is the point, actually? And that's somewhere that at 37 I didn't think I'd be where I am. Financially, mentally, it's going to be a very challenging 12 months if it stays like it is.
Ali Hunter-Blair in Herefordshire. And more on both the weather and government policies this week, I suspect. We will be hearing from the Secretary of State for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, Steve Reid. But that's it from us for now. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer is Heather Simons, and Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.